Pac-Man, a pretty understandable character. He's a pizza missing one slice that eats digital circles and is chased down by moving colors. Again, easy to understand. Pac-Man was a beast in the video game market back in the 80s. What with his TV show, merchandising, sequels, he was everywhere. Everyone remembers Pac-Man's origins, that being in the arcades, but can you name any recent Pac-Man games? Well, I'm sure you can think of some, but to the general everyday man, Pac-Man is a relic of the 80s and has roughly stayed in those classic days through re-releases like Namco Museum and Pac-Man collections. Yeah, I'll take the one with the T-pose and Pac-Man on the front, but a modern Pac-Man game that I think will stand the test of time is Pac-Man Championship Edition, DX. Plus, a gem I recently picked up on Steam that after I played it, I realized I had to make a video on. You see, let me be completely honest and say this video was supposed to be a review of its sequel, Pac-Man Championship Edition 2. But for context, I wanted to play the first game, and thank God I did. Not trying to discredit its sequel, as I love it just as much as the first game, and some people do not feel the same way about it as I do, but Pac-Man Championship Edition 1 does something that most other arcade or even video game revivals fail at, retaining the original's charm. Now, for a bit of a history lesson, Namco, or as they go by now, Bandai Namco Entertainment, does anybody remember how many times they changed their name? So, Namco and Bandai merged into Namco Bandai Games, Nevermind, and then Bandai Namco Entertainment, all in the same year. Namco has some of the most beloved arcade catalogs out of anybody. Galaga, Dig Dug, Mappy, and of course, Pac-Man. Easily one of the most recognizable video game characters of all time. Despite this, you'd think Namco would be more open to making more Pac-Man games. It's very much that flagship character. Disney has Mickey Mouse, Nintendo has Mario, and Namco has Pac-Man. But typically these days, you don't see many Pac-Man games. I mean, don't get me wrong, they exist. He still even gets new releases in the arcades every once in a while. Apex Legends, Fortnite, PUBG, Pac-Man Battle Royale in 2011. From the 90s to the early 2000s, we didn't get a whole lot of stellar Pac-Man titles. There are exceptions. I personally own a GameCube copy for Pac-Man World 2, and who could forget Pac-and-Roll? But with the introduction with Xbox Live Arcade, Namco published Pac-Man Championship Edition in 2007. And the world was basically the same, but I had a new fun Pac-Man game. A love letter for all Pac-Man fans by redefining the Pac-Man formula. How does it do so? Well, to fully understand what I mean, we need to discuss the base gameplay of this new iteration of Pac-Man. Oh, I forgot my pop filter. Championship Edition still keeps the maze gameplay of the past with multiple different mazes to choose from, all with dots and power pellets in them just like usual. Jumping into a game is where things take a huge pivot. So when you finish a line of dots, a fruit appears, and that signals the end of a dot chain, and afterwards forms a new set of dots within that stage. And as you progress, each fruit increases its point value, just like in the old games. But because you are constantly eating fruit, they throw in some awesome callbacks to some of Pac-Man's lesser known sequels, and in some of those games they had different fruits, and I want to emphasize that as clearly as possible. Ah yes, my favorite fruit, coffee. Now you'll start forming a long chain of ghosts trailing behind you, very similar to a conga line for instance. This is because Pac-Man will be bypassing sleeping ghosts. As soon as Pac-Man moves anywhere close to them, they will wake up and immediately chase Pac-Man right behind him. But the greatest and most satisfying element of this game are the power pellets. Accumulating a large cluster of ghosts and just absolutely destroying all of them in one go.
Nice.
This is pure satisfaction and is what the gameplay revolves around. Just run around eating dots in a fast-paced way and rack up as many points before the time runs out. There is something quite special about this game that others do not understand. I can pinpoint 4 reasons of why I personally believe this game stands out from other arcade reimaginings. Number 1, it keeps the spirit of Pac-Man. You'd be shocked to find that Namco, understandably in my opinion, has dabbled into other mediums that may or may not necessarily suit Pac-Man. Oh boy, let's put Pac-Man on an epic quest. Pac-Land was born, baby! Then, when that didn't work, they asked Cartoon Network to make a Pac-Man reboot and then decided to make a game based off of a TV show based off of a game. They made 2 of them. So yeah, obviously the maze format fits Pac-Man the best, and they keep the simple basic ideas of Pac-Man in this package to maximize nostalgia. We have the dots, fruit, power pellets, mazes, ghosts, a yellow circle, it's all here. Number 2, it keeps the magic of the arcades. When you pour over over an arcade game, especially one that was meant to be played with trial and error, a lot of that can be lost when you can simply just retry with no consequences. These games were meant to be played with kids pumping quarters into them, and Championship Edition keeps this charm by making the experience feeling very arcadey. Having a timer is a perfect way to force bite-sized rounds. When you regularly play Pac-Man outside of an arcade, you can play it for a bit and then move on from your day. You know you can retry as many times as possible without any consequences, and the timer also goes hand in hand with your score. The whole goal of the game is to accumulate a high score, and it outright enforces it. Right in the menu, if your friends have the game, it will tell you their scores, taunting you to one-up them. So because of that, you have a set goal in mind, and those 5-minute timers mean everyone has the same playing field. It's a controlled competitive competition in a way where only the best man can truly win on top. See, it's really hard for me to really care about high scores in most other games. When I see the score counter in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Jesus, that's a mouthful. Does anybody go, hey, what high score did you get on 1-4 in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe HD Definitive Pro Final Chapter Prologue Edition? Number 3, it keeps the pure mechanical gameplay of Pac-Man. Now, what do I mean by this? Like, sure, I already said it has Pac-Man elements, but the thing about Pac-Man is that, well, anybody can play it. It's as simple as video games can get. Eat the circles, avoid the floating colors. It's pretty easy, Grandma, I swear. And same with this game. Sure, you can get through the whole 5 minutes, but if you want to prosper on the leaderboards, you're going to have to really get good. Easy to learn, hard to master is the phrase of the day, as it goes hand in hand with these two games. There is always room for improvement when you play Pac-Man or Championship Edition, and both keep the addictive, fun gameplay that Pac-Man is known for. Number 4, it feels like an evolution. The gameplay, visual, and sound design all feel like taking Pac-Man to the next step. The neon aesthetic the game goes for complements for the more extreme, fast-paced feeling the developers were going for. It also makes things look visually unique and fun to look at, compared to the flat color of the arcade games. And the music goes for that techno feel. And both the music and visuals are so seamless, down to the transition of the maze changing. The game still introduces new mechanics like how the speed of the game gets higher and higher while you play, and if you die, you are immediately penalized, lowering the game speed considerably automatically after a death, which is a good way to still make dying feel like a huge setback, especially when you are trying to beat your high score. Lowering the game speed means you aren't going to get those last extra points that might be the difference to your high score and your friend's high score. And the speed legitimately means something, as the faster you are going, the faster you'll be able to accumulate points. But the faster you are going, the more prone you are to make a mistake. And what's even cooler is that the fastest way to increase the game speed is to eat a large conga line of ghosts, even more incentivizing you to lure a long line behind you so you can build up the speed much faster. But speaking of that conga line, you might not have noticed that all ghosts follow straight behind you. Well, this is where Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde come into play. To add another layer of challenge and a bit of luck per se to every round, the original 4 ghosts work independently of the sleeping ghosts. Yeah, sure, they sometimes follow behind you, but in no way are required to at all. You'll constantly have to keep track of them, as they might completely cut off your path. In the events that this happens, everything will slow down, giving the player the opportunity to react, as it can be pretty challenging to keep track of everything at once. You know what doesn't stop though? The clock. So you better be quick with your next move. If you find yourself completely stuck, you can use the one game's power-up, the bomb, to keep the same pace of the game. Instead of letting the player keep on dying and hope for better luck next time, a bomb will send all the ghosts back to the middle while Pac-Man continues his fast pace. Thank God this is here, as the game's pace would be killed if I kept on constantly dying to stupid situations like this. But this here, everything I just talked about, truly feels like taking Pac-Man to the next level. It's what a modern Pac-Man game would feel like, and just that alone is a huge hill to climb. Now, there are still a load of gameplay changes I'd like to talk about. A really small detail is that holding up, down, left, or right on the thumbstick will create sparks for Pac-Man. This is the fastest way to turn in the game, and it's just another small bit of strategy that keeps things moving quickly. It's kinda surprising I haven't mentioned this till now, and that is the visual customization options. The sequel would expand on this even more, but in the first game we still had plenty of options. Stuff like how the characters look, mazes, colors, it really lets you create a personalized experience. Speaking of customization, there are a wealth of game modes to choose from. You have the regular 5 minutes, but there are also 10 minutes, time trials, free play, all welcomed additions. I alluded to this earlier, but the game is filled with achievements, leaderboards, and different options and extra goodies to really get you grinding at the game. And the top players have a video attached attached to the score, so you can either learn from others and master your craft, or just see how they got 0.01 seconds. Oh, this is legit. This is a really small detail, but I like how the menu is designed, how each stage is designated a specific fruit and cycle between them in the order of the original game, and inside that menu we get a nice variety of different mazes, and some gimmicks as well. You can play every maze in the dark if you want to, or with no extra ghosts, only the original 4. And if you still are not content with these maps, you can also buy even more maps through DLC. Yeah, this game got DLC, which kinda surprised me. It clearly shows that this game did well enough to not only warrant the addition of DX and then Plus to its name, but also with some DLC. While researching this video, I was a little surprised to find that I am not the only one that has any love for this series. Metacritic gives it a pretty high score, and even IGN gave it a 10 out of 10. Alright, now before we throw a riot, is this game 10 out of 10? Well, yes, but in context. It's 10 out of 10 for what it is. You cannot compare it to The Last of Us Part 4. It just isn't fair. You cannot knock this game down because it didn't have a 3-hour-long orchestral soundtrack with an epic story and CGI cutscenes, but for the context of this being a budget Xbox Live and PlayStation Network game, it sets out what it wants to do in a creative and visually appealing way, which I think is a beautiful way to put it, as this was Toru Iwatani's final game he worked on. He was basically the godfather of Pac-Man in simple terms. If you want to play this fantastic game, you can pick it up on Steam for $10, and heck, as I'm recording, it is on sale for $5, which is a complete steal if you get it for that price. And as for its sequel, which I acknowledge I did not talk about very much in this video, but in my opinion, as I've previously stated, it is just as good as the original. It brings gameplay changes which, if you are a Championship 1 fan, you may or may not like, but probably because I played the sequel first, I appreciate the changes as it keeps the gameplay fresh and feels different enough to be a worthwhile different game, rather than a Championship Edition 1.5. It is currently on all major consoles and PC. It's $20 on console, and on PC it has a fixed reduced price of $12.99. And just like its older brother periodically goes on sale, as it is right now, Pac-Man Championship Edition is perfect for what it is, and I, and many others, will fondly remember this game and its sequel for reinventing the wheel.
It was all just a dream.
Just a dream, you say? It may be true, but I'm always here, in a different form, in a different time. Just you wait. Mr. Danerade.